I'm excited for you to meet Michelle Armour. She's a speech pathologist in Illinois at the Northwestern Marianjoy Aphasia Rehabilitation Center. She will tell you a little bit more about all that, but why I asked Michelle to join me today is she is all about the life participation approach. And what is that? In case you haven't been watching or listening to this podcast for a while, the life participation approach is about treating the whole person for understanding exactly who they are in the world, who they see themselves to be, and how aphasia impacts them. It's not just about doing a treatment to get word finding better or to improve reading ability. It's about what is important to that person and who they are. And Michelle Armour is a fellow traveler in this aphasia space, and she's about bringing the help to the people. And she's going to share her journey and how she came to start the Marianjoy Center. But in addition to that, Michelle is also the vice president of Aphasia Access. This is an organization devoted to the life participation approach for the aphasia community. It is run by professionals, speech pathologists that believe in community, believe in hope, and helping people live their life to their fullest. So Michelle is the vice president currently. She just started her 2-year term with that, and we'll get to understand a little bit more about Aphasia Access. So without further ado, let's welcome Michelle.
Welcome to the Listen for Life podcast with Genevieve Richardson. Genevieve is a speech-language pathologist rehabilitating adults with communication challenges after a stroke or due to a neurological impairment. Get equipped with knowledge from experts in the field and professionals you need to know. We'll hear stories and experiences from others who are navigating life with aphasia. So, put your earphones in and take a walk outside. This isn't just a podcast. This is a community, a resource, and a support system. We're in this together. Do life. I want to welcome you, Michelle, to the program. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
You are breaking the mold in the aphasia community, and that's why I like to share with the folks that I serve, whether they have aphasia or they love someone with aphasia, for them to realize that there's programs out there, that there's hope. I've been in the chronic space myself for 10 years, and it's all been telepractice. My mentor before me had been doing it since 2005. And so he brought me under his wing 10 years ago and taught me everything that I know in the chronic space, which is a really interesting spot. What I love that you're doing at Marianjoy Rehabilitation Center, that you have programs, you have this full continuum of care to serve clients so that they don't feel alone, so that you are bridging that gap between discharge and getting back to the life that they want. Can you tell us a little more about how you started the Aphasia Center? What was not your motivation? Because obviously we're in the field. We're in the field for a reason, and we've chosen the populations that we serve. But how did that even come about, and how did it evolve?
Sure. Yeah. So I started my career at Marianjoy, and I had started kind of in the day rehabilitation space. I did my clinical fellow. So my first year out of school where I was supervised, I did that in outpatient. And then I was offered an opportunity in our inpatient rehab hospital on the street. And so that's where I really started to work more with patients with aphasia. And it had always been my passion, even just learning about all of the things we can do in the field of speech therapy. Aphasia just was always the passion of mine. So I started to get more experience. And I also worked extra hours with what we call registry in like skilled nursing facilities and some other kind of day rehab programs that were around our area. And just throughout all the experiences, it was just a reoccurring theme. People were being discharged and their benefits were limited. And some people got a lot, months of outpatient therapy, and some people only got a few weeks. And it was frustrating for me because I was following the research in the aphasia world, and I knew that people can continue to get better, whether they're in the acute phase or chronic phase. So it was really just out of frustration that I was like, what else can we do here?
Mm-hmm.
So at Marianjoy specifically, I started just by starting a support group just to see. So I kind of put some feelers out there in the community. I sent flyers to some patients that I knew. I asked, all of my speech therapy colleagues to spread the word for me. And I didn't, it's, I don't know, I didn't know who was going to show up. I was kind of sitting in a room like nobody could come tonight. It could just be me, that first meeting. And we ended up getting so many people and all of their families. And it was magical to see it all kind of come together. They all just, they're just lifted. Everybody's spirits were lifted just by being connected. And so that's where the drive just to connect people with aphasia and connect caregivers and care partners of people with aphasia. That's where it really started for me after I saw that first meeting, and I saw how powerful it could be. So we obviously continued the support group, but the idea of the Aphasia Center being there on our campus, it was warranted. We saw all these people and they were asking, what else can we do? What are other resources? And I was like, I don't know. There's not a lot right now. So I decided to kind of work with my team and create that resource and create that place for them to connect with each other and just continue to improve and support each other and increase participation and satisfaction with life.
Right.
So that's kind of how it all started.
I love that. So what are some of the programs that you have that are available?
Sure. Yeah. So we started with just our Aphasia Center program. It's kind of what the bulk of our program is an in-person group program. So people come, they register for 8 weeks. We like to have kind of a commitment of a certain number of weeks so that people can get to know each other and, kind of experience everything that we have to offer. So they get, they can choose a day and a time. We have morning sessions, we have afternoon sessions, but people come once a week for 3 hours. And again, for that 8-week period. So they work with the same people. We get to know each other. A lot of friendships have developed through the work in the program. And across the 8 weeks, we just do various activities that all just focus on participation. So we have conversation groups where we talk about aphasia, we talk about strategies, we talk about sports, we talk about whatever we want to talk about, but we're practicing that meaningful, real life conversation, the real life goal of that. For me, I think that's everyone's goal with aphasia is to be able to converse with your family and friends. So we do that. We do some technology training if that's of interest to people. We've done math. That's not always everyone's favorite, but it's something that I feel like, kind of gets overlooked sometimes. So we do some functional math and writing, and we do a book club where we can share the experience of getting back to reading at all different levels. And it's just all based on participation and functional, meaningful life activities. And that's how our program started. And that's really the bulk of what we still do today.
Okay.
But over the last, we've been open about 6.5 years now. June will be 7 years. So we've also developed some virtual programming.
Oh, good.
Started during the pandemic, but I know telepractice is your area, and we just saw the benefits that can come from people being able to access those virtual services. So we do that. We offer individual sessions. We have a primary progressive aphasia group specifically. And most recently, we also started an intensive aphasia program, which is kind of the opposite realm of our typical program, but just expanded our offerings to that structure as well.
Can we dig in a little bit more on what does your intensive program look like? What is the duration? What kind of activities? How does it?
Yeah, they're also different, right?
Exactly.
They're
No,
very
that's
different.
why I love it. It's like going to an ice cream shop, right? You get to pick your flavor, and I think that's pretty cool that the folks in your community get to have those choices. Because that's one thing that we realized, right, with aphasia. Aphasia was not welcomed into their life, but it's there now, and it's about helping them get their control back.
Exactly.
Program,
Yes.
what
So
you have helps to support that and give them choices.
that's our hope. Yeah. And so the development of the intensive program, intensive programs are very different. They're really focused on let's make as much progress as we can in a relatively short amount of time by maximizing on that neuroplasticity, that positive change in the brain, which is much different than our participation program, right? But we were finding over the years people were really wanting access to both. So we decided to kind of give people options and develop that second structure. So our intensive program is 4 weeks long and we offer it 4 days a week. So individuals come Monday through Thursday. But like you said, to give more options, we decided to kind of have two options for programming where people can choose to do it part time, which would be 4 hours a day, 4 days a week for those 4 weeks, or they could do it full time. So they'd get 6 hours a day for 4 days a week for 4 weeks. And I think that's kind of atypical of a lot of intensive programs to have different options for part time or full time. But, sometimes endurance can be a challenge for a full day. And we found it was nice to offer people that part time option in case that was a concern. So,
What does it look like? Is that all individual, combination, individual and group, community outings? What's the makeup of that?
it's a combination. So we do 1 hour of group therapy every day. We have a maximum of 4 participants in our program at one time.
Mhm.
So we do group, we do dyads, where it's one therapist and two patients, and then individual therapy, of course. And we also have a social hour over lunch where we do a conversation group over our lunch. We eat it together. But being on a hospital campus, we have access to a cafeteria. So part of it is carryover of independence and that functional communication of navigating the cafeteria, choosing what you want, reading the menus, ordering for
Love it.
yourself. And the speech therapist is there the whole time to support if needed, but really taking, everything that we talk about in therapy and implementing it in that louder environment and that really, functional environment. And then we eat in the cafeteria as well. So we kind of change our environment and do more conversation group in that practice session. So we don't do anything out in the community yet, but I hope one day we
That's neat.
can get there.
Love it. So I'd love to pivot a little bit and talk about life participation approach. And how did
Mhm.
you come to learn about life participation and how has that influenced you as a clinician?
So I learned about it in graduate school. I remember, it was very brief. It was kind of it was one slide, but I was like, well, why don't we just do that all the time? Like it just made sense to me that that would be the goal. Like, with every patient, why wouldn't we focus on participating in life? And so I always really I tried to make it a driving force in all of my therapy. But as I was kind of growing as a clinician, I just did a lot more research on the subject of life participation. What does it look like? How can I change what I do to support my patients in life participation more? And I tried to do that with every patient I met. And within the Aphasia Center, there's just so many possibilities of ways to help people with participation in life activities that it's just all I do now. I can't imagine doing anything differently. And I found great resources and support along the way. So I am the vice president of Aphasia Access,
Yay!
but Aphasia Access is a great resource. And I found them years ago, shortly after they started as an organization, and they helped me a ton. I met so many people who were driving forces in the life participation approach and learned all I could from them. And actually, shared with them at some of the Aphasia Access events, like, this is what I'm trying to do with my program. How can I do it better? And they just gave great feedback. And it's just been a wonderful resource for me.
It's a fabulous organization. I attended last year when we were in North
Mm-hmm.
Carolina, and it was just, it's like I felt like I found my people. I've always been a
Mm-hmm.
functional therapist, but just really embracing the life participation approach, I feel like that buttoned it all up. It gave me that full comprehensive, is it permission? I'm not sure if that's the word I want, but that other people were really looking at the whole person and how they interact in life. And everybody in that room at the convention was on that same page, and we're coming up with really interesting and innovative ways to help this community participate and get back to their life.
That's exactly how I felt when I found them. I was like, this is it. This is what I've been looking for, And it's so great. They do these brag and steals where people just say, this is what I'm doing. Use it, bring it back to your patients, your clients with aphasia. If it works for them, great. And I love that. It's just a resource everyone's willing to share and support each other and just make sure that across the country, but also across the globe, that if you're a member, you have access to these things and you can spread the word within your organization, and we can all provide the life participation approach, no matter what setting we're in. And it's just great. That's my ultimate goal. So I love their mission and vision.
What is your role being a vice president? How does that play in to your day-to-day working as a clinician and your time?
Yeah, so the vice presidency, I just started that this year, and I'm honored to have been offered the role, and I'm so excited. So it's vice president of the board of directors, so just working with the whole board just to continue to move the organization further. We're specifically, designed to be a resource for clinicians so that everybody knows what the life participation approach is, and no matter if you're in a very remote area, a very urban area working, you have access to these resources to provide the services with this patient and family centered approach. So my role is to just keep developing various programs, various educational opportunities to support the board in decision making, to continue to advance the organization so we can reach as many clinicians as possible and be a resource for many.
Love that. Love that. I would love to pivot right now and kind of talk about life participation, kind of from initial diagnosis to community, somebody going from diagnosis through to like 3-4 years out with aphasia and what that might look like. What really fascinated me, specifically when I was at that conference, is how they were talking about how we can start applying life participation in the acute phase. And even though I haven't worked in the acute hospital for a long time, I was imagining, how do we implement it? And they were talking a lot about a communication book. They were talking about how we start from the very beginning, saying who this person is, so that any physician, if they were to look at this book, this being a book that goes with the person, they change rooms, they change facilities, whatever it is, that whoever interacts with them can get a quick snapshot on who this person is, and they can tailor treatment for what's motivating and important for that person. Could we just kind of talk through your experience, especially being in aphasia access and all the, I'm sure, very interesting conversations you have?
Yes, absolutely. So the life participation approach is meant to be used no matter what level of care you're in. So all the way from acute to outpatient to community, but also home health, especially important. It can be used anywhere and with anyone. And so the thing with participation, if we think about every single person in the world, our goals change over time. And that's the same with the life participation approach. So the participation goals in an acute care hospital, they're going to be very different. Your goals are going to be communicating with the staff, contacting your family if they're not there with you at that moment, getting the staff to understand. So we call it like a communication passport, kind of this book that you mentioned that lays out, this is who I am, this is my family, this is what's important to me, these are my passions, all of those things, so that they can be implemented as therapy techniques, not just in speech, but now PT and OT and whoever else sees that patient knows all this background information on them. They can personalize the conversations, personalize the activities to what they're doing. And so I think for me, it's common sense. Why wouldn't we do that? That makes so much sense for this person, And so But in acute care, then they're going to maybe transfer to inpatient rehab where their goals might be a little different. Now they're medically stable. Maybe they have systems in place to contact staff and to communicate with staff. So our participation goals might be what we need to do upon discharge, right? And what are we going to have to participate in at home to get home to be functional at home. So it's really just a conversation with the patient and the family, and really making sure that you are collaboratively as a team, the therapist, the patient, the family, deciding on these goals together. And I think that's kind of the shortcoming sometimes is a lot of times across levels of care, there's these goals, and we need goals. We need goals. We need to document them. But not everyone asks the patient and the family input on those goals, and it's their goals. They own them, right? That's the whole point. And so for me, it's really about collaboratively setting the goals and reviewing progress towards those goals as you go through the therapy. Because then, outpatient, we're home, we're doing well. Now the participation of what we want to get back to doing is going to be totally different. So we're going to have to collaboratively set new goals for that new level of care. And so I think it's just knowing that it's going to change, and it should change. We all change over time.
Mm-hmm.
When they come to a community program 3-4 years post, well, yeah, our goals are going to be totally different with what we want to participate in all that time later, And so I think it's just having that conversation and taking the time to plan appropriately and to tailor everything we do to that specific person.
And I think when clinicians have been trained in the life participation approach, then I think it gives them almost permission for passing the baton, to really saying who is this person, what their goals are, when you pass them on to that next level of care, whether it's in your facility or the next. And
Right.
again, talking to so many spouses and significant others of people with aphasia, they say, we just didn't understand. We didn't understand the process of what happens in acute or acute rehab, or if they have to go to subacute, or what's the role, what's the difference, because these families are surviving. They're in fight or flight mode, sometimes for
Mm-hmm.
years, because
Mm-hmm.
they don't have all the knowledge or the tools to help navigate where they are. And so I see our role, again, much more than just speech therapy and helping somebody communicate. It's kind of giving that whole overview, and maybe getting,
Mm-hmm.
and I know
Yeah.
that Aphasia Access has been kind of focusing on interdisciplinary team member training, educating and
Mm-hmm.
helping other disciplines understand life participation and how they can help and how we all can work together very comprehensively.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a team. Every rehab, no matter what level of care you're at, every rehab, stay has a team. And why wouldn't we work as a team with the same approach and the same thing in mind? And yeah, and I think PTs and OTs, they use, OT, let's use as an example. They have these ADLs where they're in inpatient rehab, they help the patient get dressed and groom and bathe. And so that is participation. That's perfect. So I mean, if you just look at it with that lens and not just, with the impairment based vision, then you're using the life participation
Right.
approach. It's easy. And I think sometimes it can feel daunting because you don't know exactly what it is, right? If there's this label of a term, of a care level, a model of care, service delivery, but you're not familiar with it. But then you realize, oh, I'm actually doing that. I just need to do it a little bit differently with my goal setting or with the way I evaluate, and I think it's just, you just need to kind of provide the education to the teams and then the families so that they know you're a part of this. We need your input. We want to know what's going on. It's not just all about what we say, but it's what you say. We need your input to know what you want to participate in. And so having those conversations and education opportunities.
I reflect back on my early days. When I came out of grad school, I knew I wanted to do acute rehab. That was my internship. I worked through mostly acute rehab, a little acute medical and outpatient. And I found that my wheelhouse was that inpatient acute rehab. I love the team. I love going to team conference. But reflecting back on that time, we were still talking a lot about impairments, but we weren't talking about the person, what was important to
Yeah.
them. And then later on in my career, I did a lot of home health. So it was one of my favoritist, that's my word, ways of working with someone because you're in their home. You really see how they live and what's important. And it just really brought home that we're not always working on things in the hospital that's going to directly apply to what they need to be able to do at home. And even
Mm-hmm.
those team conferences, even though I thought we were really comprehensive at the time, we weren't. We were still talking about the person as almost like an object, not as a person. Like he really wants to get back to golfing, so how can we have conversations, talk about, how he has to do certain physical therapy things and
Mm-hmm.
occupational therapy things that would help promote and move him towards that ultimate goal. Because for him, working on transfers was boring and weight
Yeah.
shifting and stuff. But if it really got tied into, well, you need to be able to do these things so you can golf. That's,
Mm-hmm.
I just think all these years we could have taken it a little bit further, but we're here now. And I think
Mm-hmm.
you and I were both on the bandwagon of, flying the flag for life participation and really understanding who a person is and their coping.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's, for me, that's what it's all about. So, yeah, I think just spreading the word on that, right? And making sure that we can reach as many facilities, as many clinicians as possible, because like you said, it's also just gearing it towards the patient. This is how this translates, right? This is how it will make you more functional and how it'll help you participate. And if they know that, I mean, if it were me, I'd be like, oh, okay. I buy into that then, now that I understand the translation here. Because otherwise, yeah, even with speech therapy too, a lot of the more impairment based practices, there's evidence supporting them, sure. But what about the stimuli we use in some of those evidence based practices? Can we make them more functional? Can we make them relatable to the patient? Can we use pictures that are their own instead of these stock images? I mean, even just small changes like that can just personalize the treatment so much more and just make it so much more meaningful.
Definitely. Can we talk a little bit about the perspective from the spouses, the family? Since you have a support group, you
Mhm.
I'd love to hear some insights that you've gathered over your time working with spouses and caregivers and what they need to know, because I think it's important for us to acknowledge their own struggle. We've always put so much emphasis on the person with aphasia and some on the families, but not as much as I think we
Mhm.
should.
I agree. I agree. And I feel like I have developed so much more as a clinician by working with the families and learning from them, because they become experts over the years, right? They're gathering all these resources. They're learning so much. And for me, I think when I'm meeting a family member earlier on, it's kind of providing almost like a roadmap. Like, this is what the rehab continuum looks like, right? This is where you guys are at now, but these are all your options for the future. These are all things that you can access, and just being really open and providing knowledge of what's out there, right? And so for me, the support group is a great way to do that and to reach people in the community. But what I've learned is that, we used to have all of our meetings together, the patients and their families all in the same room for our support groups. And I was like, this is great, but what if we split up? So every meeting now, pretty much every meeting, depending on what the topic is, we split up. We start all together. We kind of do introductions. We chat for a little while, and then we ask the caregivers to step out and go into a different room. And I have tried it where we have someone leading the conversation in that room, or there's no one. It's just the caregivers, and they just have time to talk with one another. And the feedback they've given me is that they just want to talk. They want to talk with each other. They want to share experiences. They want to share, they want to vent sometimes, or they want to share resources that they have found helpful. They don't always want to hear from us, but they need to be connected, right? And so for us, it provides an opportunity for them to have that outlet, where in the other room, there's two speech therapists that are supporting the clients. And it's nice because a support group, it's so informal, it's just, we never know who's going to show up. It's just free to anybody. Just come on over if you want. And sometimes the families have so much to say that then our clients with aphasia, our friends with aphasia at the meeting, didn't have as much opportunity to communicate, right? And so it's nice to split up, because I think everybody kind of gets what they need and what they're looking for. And we have found that to just be so helpful. We've also kind of had this peer support, where if we have somebody that's more acute that joins our aphasia center and the family, is looking for resources and has questions, I'll connect them with some of the more seasoned care partners, and they can ask whatever questions to them, and it's just a different perspective than me talking to them, and they talk to someone who is a care partner themselves. And I think those connections and just being a part of helping them find each other has just been really effective for us and helped them more than if they were just speaking to me or the physician. So it's been nice to see that develop.
It's been what got me to start this practice was the caregivers. I had a grad student working with me, and her project, she really wanted to start a support group. That was her passion. And Rebecca, shout out to you, because if it wasn't for that support group, I wouldn't be where I am here, because my mentor passed away suddenly, and he had a private practice, and we didn't have any place for our folks to go. And it was the influence of this caregiver support group where I was really hearing what they were struggling with. And they were all at different levels of living with aphasia. Some were more recent, some were longer term, had a spouse of someone with a traumatic brain injury. So we had a lot of different perspectives. One person was a paid caregiver, but she had been with her gentleman for 8 years. So I had these amazing perspectives, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to do something more. We can't focus just so much on the person with aphasia, because these caregivers are burning out. They're overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're in constant fight or flight. How do we help? What can we do with our knowledge and experience to support them to make their life better? Also.
Absolutely. And I think talking about it with the person with aphasia, I do that often. I say, when you had the stroke, it didn't just affect you, it affected your whole family. So, what do you think we could do to help you be more independent at home and kind of ease up on your spouse or your caregiver a little bit more, and kind of making it a point of discussion in therapy? Because like you said, all the discussions are always based on the patient. So if you have that conversation with the person with aphasia, it's maybe a little eye-opening, like, oh my gosh, and I feel like some of the conversations I've had, they've like, you know what, you're right. Like, yeah, it is taking a toll on them. And maybe you don't even realize it day to day because you're so focused on rehab and getting better and, yourself, and as you should be. But the conversation opens it up to recognize the care partners a little bit more and how we can incorporate different goals to help them, at home, and ease the burden on the care partner and hopefully the burnout feeling.
And just understanding, right? I love that you talked about having that conversation with a person with aphasia, because I think when you are struck with aphasia, you're kind of egocentric, right? It's all about survival in the beginning, and then eventually over time, you kind of can open up your perspective and see other people.
Right.
And sometimes we are in the position to really help support that kind of opening up their eyes to seeing how it's not just about them. And bridging that gap, and a lot of communication partner training. And how do we now communicate? How do we find a connection again? That's a big area that we are starting to get into in my practice with these
Yeah.
families. Like, how do you build this instead of being two independent people in a home, where
Mhm.
all the attention's going to the person with aphasia? How do we find a more equal footing and get connection back? Because intimacy gets lost when you're having to figure out how to get somebody dressed or showered or to get out the door to the next appointment. You're now a
Mhm.
caretaker and not a partner anymore.
Right.
Lots of identity
Mhm.
work has to happen with the person with aphasia as well as the care partner.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm happy to hear you're getting into that
Oh,
work. It's so
it's
important.
it's just about finding some strategy, realizing it. We did a it talked about the 5 love languages back in February, had an episode on it.
Mhm.
Just as it was something we talked about in our caregiver support group, like, what is it that lights you up? What do you need? I
Mhm.
have a couple that the wife really needs physical touch, and her husband's never been big on that, but now that he has his stroke and he's kind of in a wheelchair and he can't always, show that kind of physical affection, we came up with some ways. So when I'm online with them, I just kind of go, like this. And
Mhm.
that's all he needs. And then he does this and he hugs her. And it it's an amazing way to see them start building that connection back. Or if they're standing in the
Yeah.
kitchen, we've given him specific prompts to think about. So if he's standing up doing dishes and his wife comes over, he can hold on
Mhm.
and put his head on her shoulder, and that
Oh, I love
makes her day. So just tiny little things, but this is stuff I would never have thought about before. I worked with this
right.
caregiver support group to understand what they
Mhm.
were missing. So we've got so
Yeah.
much work to be done, but it's
Absolutely.
all good. Oh, Michelle, I just want to thank you so much for coming on today, sharing your expertise.
Thank you for having me.
And I am so
Yeah.
excited that you're vice president, and we have a new president at Aphasia
Mhm.
Access. And I'm
Correct.
looking forward to,
Sarah Wallace, yes.
so what
Mhm.
is coming next? I know we have some amazing researchers that are all about the life participation approach. And I love how
Mhm.
Aphasia Access is getting the information to the clinicians.
Yes. Yes. Clinicians and students,
Oh, yes.
helping the, professors of speech language pathology really emphasize the life participation in the graduate school for the students, our future SLPs, so that, it's not always learning on the job, but you can come in more equipped with knowledge of the life participation approach. So we focus on reaching out to them. We focus on the frontline clinicians, just anyone that is impacted or working with individuals with aphasia to spread the word, spread the education. In terms of what comes next for Aphasia Access, we have new kind of e-learning opportunities to learn about patient-centered care, to learn about life participation approach. So those are great opportunities. The first one is out now, but it will be a series of educational opportunities that can just be accessed online. And I think that's a great way to reach as many people as possible, no matter where they are in the world. So between that and these leadership summits that we have, hopefully inviting more and more people to attend those, because like you said, it's like being wrapped up in a big hug when you go to these leadership summits. It just validates everything that deep down you should be doing with your patients, and then learning so much from people who are so innovative and just creatively making changes in the world of aphasia and opening that up to you, right? Here it is on a silver platter. Use it, bring it home, use it tomorrow with whatever patient you see. And so I think that's what it's all about, is just building the community for access, knowledge, and implementation once you get back. So
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Michelle, for taking time out of your busy day and having this great conversation.
thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk with you today.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen for Life podcast. We hope you feel empowered and supported. Head over to listenforlifepodcast.com to see the show notes with links and information from today's episode. Do you have a topic, a resource to share, or a guest recommendation? Inquiring minds want to know. Let us know in the comments section. Wishing you a fabulous week.